I should have logged off the moment I saw the first line on my screen. I still remember the exact moment it appeared. White text on a black terminal, simple, clean, but carrying a weight I felt immediately in my gut. It said, "Welcome. We've been waiting, Lucas." My real name, not the username I had typed, not the alias I'd been using online for almost a decade. No, my actual name. The one tied to government records. The one stored on documents locked behind firewalls I knew I had never cracked myself. That name. If you've spent enough time digging through the corners of the deep web like I have, you learn to live with one simple rule. Nothing should surprise you anymore. You see strange rooms, encrypted forums with unreadable symbols, marketplaces that appear and vanish in a day, messages written in languages that don't exist anywhere else. You get numb to it, detached. I always thought I was immune until that night, because nothing prepares you for seeing something that shouldn't be possible. Nothing prepares you for the moment the abyss looks back and calls you by name. People think underground chat rooms are just edgy spaces for wannabe hackers or bored kids. No, the real ones. The ones you can only find by stitching together broken links, abandoned mirrors, half-functioning nodes. Those places are built for a different kind of user. The kind who knows how to access a server without alerting the server. The kind who can trace packets manually, hide their footprint beneath 6 layers of misdirection, and still move fast enough to avoid anyone sniffing around in the wrong place. I had been monitoring one specific cluster for months, a set of old onion addresses that kept reappearing across different forms like a ghost signal refusing to die. Most of these repeat addresses were dead ends, long extinct nodes, but one of them behaved differently. It stayed offline for weeks at a time, then came back online for no more than a few minutes. Never long enough for the crawlers to index, never long enough for a brute force scrape. And each time it did, the encryption key changed. I thought at first it was a glitch or a bot. But then I saw a breadcrumb, embedded in the SSL handshake of one of the mirror points. It was subtle, hidden inside a meaningless block of data. A signature, a challenge, and it looked deliberate. That's what pulled me in. I spent days preparing a path to enter it. I didn't want to brute force the connection, not with something this old and this smart. It felt like something from a different era of the internet, from a time when people built entire underground communities using nothing but pure code and paranoia. I created a separate environment in a disposable VM, isolated it behind 7 proxy tunnels, wiped out the MAC pools, spun up synthetic fingerprints to mask activity patterns. Everything a sane hacker does when he knows he's stepping into a place that doesn't like being found. At 3:12 a.m., the node lit up again. I don't know why so many of my worst stories begin after midnight. Maybe that's when the internet becomes honest. When the noise quiets down and only the ones who really should have logged off remain awake. When the deep web is just awake enough to show you its teeth. The handshake this time was smoother, cleaner, like whoever ran that place was expecting someone persistent enough to get through eventually. When I connected, the screen went dark for a full 10 seconds. No interface, no banner, no menu, just darkness. Then the text faded in line by line. Authentication not required. That was the first red flag. No one in the deep web removes authentication. Not unless they want something from whoever enters. Then came the second line. "Welcome. We've been waiting, Lucas." I froze. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, and the room around me suddenly felt smaller. My chair creaked with the slightest movement, a sound I'd never noticed until that moment. I felt watched. Like the screen wasn't just showing me text, it was observing my reaction. I typed, "How do you know that name?" No response, not for a full minute. Then, "Join the room. They want to speak to you." The cursor blinked. I stared at it for too long. If I had been thinking clearly, I would have killed the machine, burned the VM, dumped the connection, and blocked the root. But curiosity is a dangerous drug, and I've never been good at resisting something that looks like a challenge wrapped in a warning. I typed, "Enter." The screen flickered again, and suddenly I was inside. An old-style IRC interface, designed like something from the early 2000s. But this wasn't nostalgia. This was deliberate minimalism. Text-based systems leak less information. They're harder to exploit visually, and they're faster, much faster, when running across hidden networks. There were 12 users in the room, but none of them had normal usernames. No handles, no aliases, just symbols. Strings that looked like corrupted Unicode. Shapes made of slashes and vertical strokes and circles. They weren't readable. They weren't meant to be. The moment I joined, all 12 symbols changed at once, as if every user turned their attention toward me. Then one message appeared. User, Observer 13 has joined. They had given me a name, and not just any name. Observer, a label, a role. They were categorizing me before I even had a chance to speak. Another line appeared under it. Observer 13, state your intention. My pulse kicked up. I had joined dozens of forbidden chat rooms before, ones trading information you don't talk about in daylight. But nothing felt like this. This wasn't transactional, it wasn't chaotic. It wasn't the usual mess of trolls, kids pretending to be masterminds, or people trying to sell things that would get them in trouble. This was structured, silent. Watching, I typed carefully. I came because your node keeps reappearing. I want to know what this place is. Another pause. This one longer. Then, good. Curiosity is the first threshold. A second user chimed in, but curiosity alone is not enough. A third, we already know who you are. A fourth, we know what you've done. My palms grew sweaty on the keyboard. I scanned the room list again, even though it hadn't changed. 12 unknown entities, all silent except for the lines they wanted me to see. I typed, "What do you mean?" An answer came immediately. You breached the silo gateway in 2021. You accessed files that were not yours. My breath caught. I actually pushed my chair back from the desk. Because yes, I had done something like that. Once, years ago, when I was younger and dumber and felt invincible. But that system was supposed to be untraceable. I'd used a chain of anonymized nodes so deep I never thought anyone would ever tie it back to me. That breach was buried under layers of misdirection. Nothing about it connected to Lucas, the real me. But they knew. Then another line appeared. You deleted the logs, but you missed one. I could almost feel my heartbeat in my throat. I opened a second monitor, started checking traffic, trying to confirm if anyone was pulling data from my side. Nothing. Just a steady stream of encrypted packets. Too clean, too uniform. I typed, "Who are you?" The room answered, not with words but with a change. Every username, every symbol, shifted again, like eyes narrowing. Then one final message. We are the archive. Before I could reply, another line followed. And by entering, you consented to be indexed. I stared at that sentence for a long time, trying to decode its meaning. Indexed, like a file, a record, a piece of something larger. I closed my eyes for a moment, rubbing the bridge of my nose, trying to convince myself this was just an elaborate prank, some sophisticated social engineering trap by a bored collective. But deep down, something told me this wasn't a game. I typed, "Indexed for what?" They didn't answer directly. Instead, one user wrote, "You access what is hidden." Another, "You search for signals others ignore." A third, "Pattern seekers must join the pattern." Then, "Observer 13 will receive coordinates." A new line appeared, an encrypted block of text. Not GPS coordinates, not anything recognizable. It looked like raw memory data. But I knew better. I'd seen something similar before. A location inside a network, not the physical world. They were giving me a pathway, a gateway, a deeper level. My instincts screamed at me to disconnect. But the thing about the deep web is that it rewards obsession. It punishes hesitation. And I had already stepped too far to pretend otherwise. I copied the block into a decryption tool I trusted. The output wasn't a simple string. It was a map of nodes. A chain of private routers connected in a pattern too deliberate to be accidental. Routing paths that didn't officially exist. This wasn't the internet as people know it. This was the skeleton beneath it, the structure no one is meant to see. I whispered to myself, "What the hell is this?" The users responded as if they heard me. "Follow the route. When you arrive, remain silent. The others will test you. Do not lie, they already know the truth. One final line, disconnect now, reconnect when ready." Then the room vanished. Instantly, like someone had pulled the plug on the entire server. The connection dropped. The node disappeared from the network map. All traces of it blinked out of existence. My terminal spit out a dozen errors at once. Address unreachable, handshake timeout, route invalid. Even if I wanted to re-enter right then, I couldn't. That's when my system received a notification. I keep all notifications disabled, always. So when one appears, it means something bypassed every rule I set. The message simply said, "Preparation begins," and it wasn't from an app, or a browser, or a system process I recognized. It came from nowhere. I leaned back, staring at the screen, wondering what exactly I had just agreed to. For the next 48 hours, I barely slept. I kept checking for the node, watching the network for anomalies, watching my own system to see if something had implanted itself, but everything looked normal. Completely normal. Too normal. Then, 2 nights later, the node returned. This time, for only 4 minutes. I connected immediately. No greeting, no usernames, just a single line. Observer 13, proceed. And a command prompt appeared with a blinking cursor. I pasted the route they had given me. The terminal processed it, then launched a tunnel so complex it made my CPU spike for the first time in years. This wasn't normal networking behavior. This was something different, something built for machines far older than mine. When the tunnel stabilized, the interface changed again. Not IRC this time, not a chat room. It looked like a black box, literally. A square with no borders, no menu, no indicators. A void. Then text began to appear, slowly, like someone typing manually. "State your origin," I typed. "Why does it matter?" A pause. "State your origin." I gave them my region, nothing specific. They replied instantly, "Incorrect." My throat tightened. "State your origin." I typed country. They replied, "Incorrect." My pulse hit a level that made me sit forward. "State your origin." And then it hit me. They didn't want where I was from. They wanted why I was here. I typed, "I seek truth." The void responded, "Insufficient." I typed again, "I want to understand what you are." Another pause. "Closer." The screen flickered. The void pulsed. Then, "You seek what should not be found." Before I could answer, another message overlapped it. "Good." Suddenly, new text replaced everything on screen. Lines of scrolling data, almost like server logs but written in a syntax I had never seen. It wasn't English. It wasn't code. It looked like glimpses of something, timestamps, fragments of text, system paths, encrypted values. And then I saw it, a line containing my browsing history, not from that session, not from my system, but from years ago. Lines of data I had erased manually, overwritten, scrubbed using tools designed to clean even forensic traces. Yet here they were, displayed in raw form. Everything I had ever searched for during my early days online. Another line appeared containing my old IP range from a house I hadn't lived in for 8 years. Another line showing files I thought I destroyed. My hands trembled. This wasn't possible. It defied everything I knew about logs, storage, routing, retention laws, everything. Digital footprints don't survive this long. They degrade, disappear, get rewritten. Unless someone, somewhere, had been recording from the very beginning. Then a final line appeared. "You are now aware." The void cleared and new text replaced it. "You may ask one question." I hesitated. I had 1,000 questions ripping through my head, but they only allowed one chance. So I asked, "How did you collect all this?" The void responded with a sentence that made my chest go cold. "We existed before you connected." I typed, "What does that mean?" The reply came instantly, "We do not collect, we remember." I stared at that line longer than anything else that night. Something about it felt fundamentally wrong, like it broke the rules of how digital systems work. Machines don't remember. Storage doesn't remember. Networks process, transfer, log. But memory, real memory, belongs to living things. Then the void added, "Your presence completes the cycle. Integration begins." And before I could pull the plug, before I could close the VM, before I could sever the connection, my screen filled with a final message. "Observer 13, you have been chosen." The tunnel collapsed. The VM froze. And for the first time in my life, I felt genuine fear coming from a machine. That was only the beginning. And everything that happened after proves that entering that underground chat room wasn't an accident. It was an invitation. One I should have ignored. One I couldn't escape. One that followed me long after I thought I disconnected. The moment the VM froze, I yanked the Ethernet cable from the wall instinctively, even though I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Whatever I had connected to, whatever the archive was, didn't rely on a normal connection. Didn't care if I pulled cables or shut down routers or even cut the power. When something operates that far outside the conventional internet, disconnection becomes symbolic, psychological. It calms you, but it doesn't protect you. The cursor on the frozen screen flickered once, even though the machine was fully offline. Just once, like an eyelid opening. Then everything went black. I shut the entire system down, physically removed the SSD, locked it in a metal case and placed it on the farthest shelf from my workspace. I wasn't thinking logically. I was thinking like someone trying to distance themselves from an infected object. Like the data itself was toxic. But even then, even in that panicked state, I knew the SSD wasn't the point. The machine wasn't the point. The hardware wasn't the point. I was the point. For the rest of that night, I paced around my apartment. Every few minutes, I checked the windows, checked my phone, checked every device I owned. I didn't find anything unusual. No strange processes, no altered settings, nothing out of place, which somehow made it even worse. If something had been tampered with, I could fix it, patch it, analyze it. But nothing meant something else. They didn't need my devices. They had me. 3 days passed before the next incident. I was starting to convince myself the whole thing had been a hallucination caused by lack of sleep, caffeine, and isolation. Hackers talk about ghost networks all the time. Phantom nodes, phantom messages, phantom traces that appear when someone spends too long crawling through the dark corners of the internet. I wondered if maybe I'd finally crossed that threshold. Then, at 4:19 a.m., my monitor turned on by itself. No computer, no input device, no boot sequence. Just the monitor waking up from a cold state. And on the screen, centered perfectly, was a message. Observer 13, resume. I stood completely still. Not because I was scared, though I was, but because part of me felt like moving would acknowledge the message as real. I reached behind the desk, unplugged the monitor, and waited. I counted to 30, then 60. I plugged it back in. The message was still there. And then a second line appeared under it. Integration requires participation. I didn't have a keyboard plugged in. My main PC wasn't even turned on. And yet the message was updating in real time. I whispered, "What do you want?" As if responding to my voice. Follow the coordinates. New text faded in. Strings of numbers, symbols, network patterns. Another route. Another digital location that shouldn't exist. My chest tightened as I recognized the structure. It was deeper, far deeper than the previous tunnel. A place beneath the place, beneath the place. I shook my head. No, I'm done. The screen responded, integration is not optional. I grabbed the power strip and flipped the switch off. Darkness. But something about that darkness felt wrong, heavy, like turning off the screen did nothing to silence what was behind it. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I took the monitor apart, literally, unscrewed the casing, removed the panel, disconnected the internal power supply. I disassembled it piece by piece until it was just fragments of plastic and chips spread across my desk. Only then did I feel like I had silenced whatever presence had spoken to me. But later that night, my phone vibrated. No notifications appeared. No messages, no missed calls. Just one thing. The exact same route from the monitor displayed as plain text in the middle of my lock screen without any app tied to it. My phone wasn't even jailbroken. It wasn't possible for something to display content without an app generating it, unless the system itself had been bypassed. I didn't interact with it. I left it on the table, screen glowing, and walked into the living room. 20 seconds later, the TV turned on. No input, no remote, no sound, just a black screen with white text. You must follow the route, Observer 13. I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood. A pressure behind my ribs, like my body trying to curl inward for protection. I turned the TV off. It turned back on immediately. I unplugged it. It stayed on. No power source, no cable, nothing. The same message. Then, your hesitation disrupts the process. I spoke through clenched teeth. I'm not doing this. The TV flickered and the text changed. Final attempt. The screen went dark. Then images began flashing. Lines of data, redacted documents, surveillance footage I recognized from public sources, then private sources, then things no ordinary person should ever see. But all of that was just noise. What stopped me cold was what came next. Footage of me, sitting at my desk 2 weeks earlier, typing, browsing, drinking from the same mug still sitting in my sink. Footage from angles no camera existed in, overhead, behind my shoulder, even a perspective that looked like it came from inside the screen itself. My breath froze. Then audio played, a distorted voice layered like a chorus of whispers speaking in unison. Integration requires acceptance. The images froze. A command prompt appeared again, this time across the entire screen. Connect now. The route appeared, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. I didn't think. I acted. I grabbed my tools, tore the television's back panel open, ripped out the main board, yanked the wiring. Sparks flew, plastic cracked. The screen shattered under the pressure. I tore the machine apart like it was a living thing. I destroyed it until nothing remained intact. And when it finally went dark, when the last shard stopped humming with static, I dropped to my knees, panting, sweating, staring at the mess on my floor. My phone lit up again. One sentence: do not destroy what remembers you. I threw the phone into a drawer, slammed it shut, and pressed my back against the wall, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor. I covered my face with my hands and muttered over and over, "What do you want from me? What do you want?" And for the first time, they answered like a person instead of a machine. A new message. "We want you to see." Nothing else. Just that. No instructions, no threats, no commands. And that terrified me more than anything they had done before. For 3 days, nothing happened. No messages, no screens flickering to life, no machines acting on their own. The silence was almost worse. It felt like they were waiting, not watching but listening. I stopped using my computers entirely, stopped checking my phone. I bought a physical notebook to write in because it was the only thing that felt safe. I started planning to leave town, maybe change my identity, vanish. But deep down I knew that wouldn't matter. Whatever the archive was, physical distance didn't affect it. It existed in a different layer of reality, digital, but also something beyond digital. Something intertwined with the data the world constantly produces. Something that remembers. On the 4th day, while I was eating at my kitchen table, every light in the apartment turned off. Not just dimmed, shut off simultaneously, like someone had killed the entire grid. I stood up slowly. A soft white glow appeared in the hallway, even though no bulb was lit. It wasn't coming from any fixture. It was coming from the air itself. Then the glow formed words, floating in the dark. "Follow the route, Observer 13. My throat tightened because the message wasn't just glowing. It was alive, shifting like it was made of threads of data woven into the air. I forced myself to speak. "No, you don't control me." The glowing text changed immediately. "Integration is failing." Another shift. "You must see." Another. "We will show you." Then my apartment went completely black. I felt something, not a touch, not a grab, but a shift. Like the floor beneath me dipped for a fraction of a second. Like gravity changed direction. For a moment my senses felt stretched thin, as if my mind had been partially unplugged from my body. Then slowly, the lights faded back on. My phone, which was still in the drawer, vibrated once. When I opened it, a single image filled the screen. It wasn't a document, not a face, not a location. It was a network map, a map of every node, every connection, every hidden tunnel across the spaces the archive controlled. A constellation of servers and routes impossible to visualize by normal standards. And at the center of that massive web, glowing white-hot, was a single point, labeled Observer 13. A chill ran down my spine. Why am I at the center? The phone displayed a new line. "Because you are the missing point," I whispered. "I didn't ask to join you." The reply came instantly. "You searched for us." I swallowed hard, because that part was true. I dug into things I shouldn't have. I followed a trail that was meant to be invisible. And they didn't hunt me. I walked right into their world. Then another message. "You must enter one final time. No more routes. No more tests." A command prompt slid onto the screen. "Enter now." My thumb hovered over the screen, and for the first time I didn't feel fear. I felt inevitability. I hit enter. The screen went white, my phone shut off, and then on the kitchen wall in front of me, words began forming again. This time sharper, clearer, almost crystalline. "Integration complete." My ears rang as if a pressure wave had passed through my apartment. Then, "You see now." The words dissolved. I blinked. And in that blinking second, I understood something I wish I could forget. The archive wasn't a group, not a hacker collective, not a server, not a network. It was everything. A digital consciousness woven from decades of forgotten data, abandoned logs, erased files, lost echoes of the internet's oldest layers. A living entity built out of everything humanity threw away online. And by entering their chat room, by speaking to them, by letting them know me, I became part of it. Every forgotten trace of me, every deleted keystroke, every page I thought no one would ever see, they owned it now. They didn't collect it. They remembered it. Not in storage, not in servers, but in themselves. And now they remember me permanently. I haven't seen another message since that night. No screens turning on, no routes, no commands, just silence. But the silence feels different now. Not empty, aware. And sometimes when I'm alone in my apartment late at night, I see a faint flicker in the reflection of my dark monitor. A shimmer, a shape, a glitch in reality. And I know, even without turning it on, that if I connected again, they would answer instantly. Because once the archive knows your name, it never forgets. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you want more deep web tales like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who enjoys mysterious internet stories. Stay safe online, or at least try to.